Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today we are playing Kerbal Space Program. It's been one of my all-time favorite games. It's been a while since I've played, so we're going to start a new save file here. I'm doing just normal difficulty on career mode. I find it's the best way to sort of reacquaint myself to the game. Let's name this here TP Industries. And choose a appropriate looking flag here. Let's do this one. That looks good. All right. Start her up here. First things first, going on my mission control. Gonna get some scientific data and gonna launch a vessel. Alright, that's good. And a vehicle assembly. Alright, we'll need a command pod. Always need a parachute so you don't hit the ground. And then we just need an engine to take us off the launch pad there. Crew is Jebediah Kerman. And here we are going to call this Tester Mark 1. And before you go, you should always check your staging. On the bottom right here, you'll see this orange area. So what we do is we add a stage, and we're going to move the engine down, so this will be the first thing to fire off. Here we are at the launch pad. Now when I launch, I'm going to turn a little bit to the right, just so we don't get too high up in the sky. The parachutes have a little bit of an issue deploying and getting shredded. So first thing I'm going to do here is right-click the crew hatch, get a crew report from the launch pad. Crew report from launch pad. Just a little bit of extra science, and that will technically complete our first mission of gathering data. Second mission is launching a vessel, and we can do that by pressing spacebar. So I'm turning over to the right here, or east. That solid fuel is going to burn up real quick. We can't control the rate at which it burns. It just burns until it's done. And then after our speed slows down to a reasonable level, we'll deploy our parachute. And that should bring us safely back to the surface of the planet here. Alright, still flying through the air here. I'm going to try to slow myself down a little bit by wiggling the spacecraft. Alright. Deploying our parachute. It's going to slow us down here even more. Initially, it'll act as a drogue chute, which just means reducing your speed from very high to not quite as high. And as we descend, ideally this will deploy and make our landing in the water safe and successful. So let's wait for a minute here as we descend. Playing the waiting game. Later on, I'll probably be accelerating time during stages like this, just so things aren't quite as monotonous, but I'm going to just be careful to make sure that we don't get too fast, and the parachute opens all the way successfully here. And there we go, it's deploying all the way. Our speed decreases even more. Now we're coming down at a relatively safe speed, about 7 meters a second. So at this point I will accelerate time. When you're in the atmosphere, you can only go up to 4 times speed acceleration because of the atmospheric physics at play. Touchdown, splash down, and then we go up to the middle here. We can recover our vessel by clicking the green button. And we're back at the Space Center. See here, this tells us our mission summary, our science. We got our crew report. We also recovered a vessel that survived flight. Total of 6.5 science. We also get a little bit of a refund for our parts usage because they didn't go very far away. We get 97% of that value back. And of course, Jeb got 1 XP for flying his first mission. So Jebediah has many more great things to do in the future here. Go down here in the bottom right, you'll see messages. Show some of our milestones. This will show you things like speed records. This will show your distance records, some firsts. We splashed into the ocean. We recovered a crew. Those basically give you a little bit of bonus cash, reputation, and experience. Sorry, science. So your cash is the green, your science is the blue, and your reputation is the gold stars. The more reputation you have, the better missions you have access to. That's our 1 contract completed. We achieved our goal, launching a vessel. Another contract is gathering the scientific data. Contract complete. All right. We can go back to mission control here and pick 2 more of these active contracts. Let's look at this here. We've got focused observational studies. So these could be tricky because if it says flight below 17,000 meters, that means we need to take a plane all the way out to that area and get the study done. So be cautious of taking any of these. Now, if it's above, that means you can do it from space. However, you have a very limited window in which to complete it. So I usually like to do these test missions first. So this one just says test the swivel liquid fuel engine landed at Kerbin. So that's easy enough. That means landed is also on the launch pad. So we'll pick that up. This one is testing the fleet in flight. I'm not going to worry about that yet because the parameters are a little too specific. So something that would be easier to test at this point would be to test this decoupler splash down at Kerbin. So once we splash down at the end of our mission, we can run the test on this decoupler and get some free quick completion experience and cash. All right, Gene. All right, so back at the Kerbal Space Center, let's go to research and development and spend some of our hard-earned science. Here is our tree. Kind of a standard tech tree setup, starting from the left, going to the right. Basic rocketry will unlock another solid fuel booster with a little bit larger, and also our first fuel tank. Now you'll see here, this is the swivel liquid engine. The reason it's highlighted in teal is because it has to do with our current mission that we've accepted. So we're going to click this because we need that fuel tank. Going down here, we see the TD12 decoupler is also highlighted in teal because it's part of our current mission. They denote it as experimental when it's a mission element. This also unlocks the thermometer, communitrons. So the thermometer is going to give us extra science. The communitrons will let us communicate back to the Space Center, which will be useful in the future for relaying scientific data or controlling a probe that does not have any Kerbals on board. Let's research this as well. The next tier all cost higher amounts of science, 20, 18, 15. We can't afford that yet because we're down to 9.5. So we'll leave this facility and we'll go back to the vehicle assembly building. Now we're going to make a few quick tweaks to this craft. For starters, I'm going to take off the fleet booster here. And I'm adding a TD12 decoupler. And I'm actually going to add 2 of these because we have a mission that involves testing one while splashdown. So normally this would not be a setup you would use. There's no real reason to have 2 in a row like this. But what you'll notice is on the staging at the bottom right here, I'm going to move the parachute to the middle. That way the highest decoupler hasn't been activated yet. This will be the one that we activate when we're splashed down to fulfill the contract requirement of testing the TD12 decoupler while splashdown. Other than that, we just need to add a fuel tank. 1 will do for this mission. And our swivel fuel engine. This fuel engine you'll use quite a bit throughout the early stages of the game, mainly because, as its name implies, swivel means it has some gimbling. Now, gimbling is where the engine itself can move to give you a little bit more control. You see the vectoring range here of 3 degrees. That will help you keep control of the rocket as it's ascending whenever that rocket is being burned. Alright, this one will be called Tester Mark II. And we'll check our crew again. We're going to keep Jebediah in the pilot seat for this one. Double check your staging. We want the engine to go off. Then we're going to separate the engine and the fuel tank. We're going to activate the parachute so it floats down safely into the water. And then we'll do our final tests for the mission parameter. Let's go to launch. Back on the launch pad here. I'm going to check here. We have all the notes done for this contract up here. Test this swivel engine. So by right-clicking it and clicking Run Tests, that is going to complete that mission. Easy peasy. Now we just need to launch and get over to the water so we can be splashed down for the next mission. So I've hit spacebar. You'll notice nothing happens yet. That's because I forgot to increase my throttle. Now throttle increases by using the shift and control. See, by tapping shift I can increase it slowly. If I press Z, it goes to maximum. So I'm going to throttle down just a little bit here, and we'll turn towards the water. I just want my rocket to go far enough over to where I splash down. At this point I will activate the second stage, which is going to split the rocket and the fuel tank off. And we'll also go ahead and deploy our parachute, since it's safe to do so. So you'll notice this is slowing me down. The rest of my craft is just careening off into the water there. Let's get rid of this. I'm going to speed up time because you'll notice that the parachute will eventually deploy. There we go. And the capsule will return to the water very close to the KSP, Kerbal Space Center. And then when we descend, I'll open up the contracts tab here. You'll notice that the splashdown is active when the craft is in fact safely in the water here. There we go. Okay, so now that all these contract parameters are active, we right-click that decoupler that I kept on there. And you'll notice that it's not actually showing the run test option. If that's the case, what you might need to do is just activate it through staging. There's a note here too that says to perform the test, activate the part through the staging sequence when all conditions are met. So if I hit the last space bar, this is going to activate stage 0, which should complete this contract. There we go. Contract complete. Not a big to-do. At this point, though, before we recover our craft, I'm going to right-click and do another crew report because we have yet to do a crew report while splashdown. Crew report from Kerbals Water. We're going to get some extra science from there. Keep that experiment. Now we can go up and recover our vessel. Back at the Kerbal Space Center, you'll see we've got some science from the recovery. Not as much. That starts decreasing because it's less impressive to the scientists. Crew report from Kerbals Water that we got. Obviously a little bit of a return on our parts that ended up being recovered. And of course, no more experience for Jebediah because he basically just did the same thing as the last mission. One thing you'll notice is that there is a little icon out here. That's debris. It's effectively what was ejected from the mission. For debris, what you can do is click on the tracking station. Gene's going to welcome us. And in the tracking station, that will be tracking all of your active missions and also any debris that results from them. In this case, the debris isn't showing up because I have not selected the filter. First filter is toggle debris. So if I click that on, suddenly now you'll notice that we have a new icon. The Tester Mark II debris splashdown at Kerbin. I can click on that, and I can either recover it, fly it. In this case, I'm going to recover it because I want to get a little bit of extra money from those parts. Recover. There we go. Now when we leave the facility, that icon will be gone from the water. Let's also take a moment to check out our contracts here. We've got some contract completions. Excellent. Looking good. All right. We still can't afford any new science from the R&D department. So we need to get more science. Let's look at some more active contracts and see what other missions we can take on here. More observational studies. Again, not a big fan. Let's see here. We have another splashdown. We did that one, so it's not quite as impressive. You'll see each of these missions has little stars next to them. 1 star is not very impressive. 2 is somewhat impressive. 3 is very impressive. So you want to kind of shoot for the highest amount of stars, but at this point we're a little too inefficient to orbit Kerbin yet. So we need to take a few more smaller contracts here to boost up our science so we get more unlockable technology. Here we have tested the parachute between 1,000 and 5,000 meters while flying at a speed of 130 to 190 meters per second. Let's try this contract out. We'll see if we can hit that. It's going to be a little tricky to get such a specific condition, so I'm just going to do the one mission for now. Go back to our vehicle assembly building. That wants us to get between 1,000 meters and 5,000. That should be good with our current loadout. So I'm just going to use the same exact vessel. Jebediah will do it. We'll launch here. We already have the Mark 16 parachute attached to the craft. That's the little cone at the top there. So what I'm going to do is actually open up this contracts panel and have this showing while we're flying. Another thing you could do is right click and pin the parachute so that it'll always be present. Even if I click around and right click, this window will stay open. So we'll be able to deploy this directly if need be whenever these conditions are met. Let's throttle up here. I'm going to go about 2/3 of the way and we'll hit space to start flying. So at about 130 meters a second, we're going to want to slow down a little bit. Okay, and then as soon as we hit the altitude mark, we're going to hit space bar. And then that's our deploying. So we deploy that a little bit fast. Cut the engine here. Actually, that just ran out of fuel. We got lucky there because we ditched it while it was still flying. But in this instance, that does qualify as completing this contract. A little sloppy, but we'll take it. It's 28,000 bucks, free and clear. And a little bit more science. Let's go ahead and time warp down to the surface again. Don't even think we made it to the water this go around. This will be right on the beach. If you're wondering what that little dark spot there is in the distance, that is actually a little memorial we can go visit at some point when we're doing some ground research. I always like to slow down to normal time right before we touch down. And that is a new milestone because it's the first time we've actually landed on the surface and not in the water. Having said that, let's go ahead and right-click the crew hatch again. We'll do another crew report. This time we get a crew report from Kerbin Shores. Now we can recover our vessel. At this point, you know the drill. We're looking at our report for the end of the mission. Still no more experience for Jebediah. He's not going to get a lot of XP until we start going up into space. Let's look at research and development. We now have 21 science to spend, so we can unlock a new node. Going through these, it's tempting to go for the general rocketry because we get a bigger fuel tank, we get a big solid booster and a new engine. But if you look at survivability, that's going to give us some access to more science equipment. We actually have the press mat barometer and a heat shield and some new parachutes. Also the service bay, which you can store small probes, but also science experiments inside, so it makes the ships a little bit more aerodynamic. And the smallest landing struts, or landing legs. I think in our case, though, let's go ahead and take this science package here. Now with more survivability, we're going to actually be able to do more with our rockets and hopefully get a little bit more science so we can go further. Let's look at some more missions here. I still don't know if we can escape the atmosphere just yet. We need a lot of Delta V to do so, but why don't we give it a shot? We just have to go straight up as fast as possible and survive the fall back down. With more parachutes, that should be a little bit easier now. We'll accept that. Go to our vehicle assembly building. Now we want to create a whole new spacecraft here. Start with the Mark 1 command pod. We will stick with the Mark 16 parachute, but what I'm also going to do is add 2 of these radial mount drogue chutes. So these attach to the side of the spacecraft. And you'll see it's kind of sliding around here. If I zoom in, you can see better. What I do is I tap C, and that changes it down here to a toggle snap. Makes it a little easier to keep everything lined up. Also by hitting X, I can change the symmetry mode. So now instead of just placing one, we're actually placing 2 chutes on the craft. This will keep it balanced and actually slow it down a lot quicker. Now that those are attached, I'm going to already check my staging here and move the drogue chutes down so that they open up first. We need those to slow the whole craft down enough so that our normal parachute can open up without tearing off in flight. One other thing is if we're trying to go into the atmosphere, we need to come back through the atmosphere, which means we'll need a heat shield. Some of these smaller command pods do a pretty good job of reflecting heat on their own, but you can never be too safe by adding a heat shield to the command pod itself. We'll add a decoupler. Click off of that. Now we need fuel tanks. To get up in orbit, we're going to need a few fuel tanks. Let's go ahead and add 1, 2, 3, probably 4, and then our swivel engine. Alright. See, that gives us about 1,200 meters per second of delta V. Now, I haven't mentioned it yet, but delta V is one of the most important statistics in the game. Basically tells you how much your craft can affect its movement. However, I don't know if 1,200 is going to be enough to get us all the way up to the atmosphere, so I'm adding another decoupler, and we're going to put on a solid fuel booster at the bottom here. So this will activate first, burn through all that fuel, then we'll drop it, and we'll activate our second stage of engine, which will be the swivel, and that should hopefully get us all the way out of the atmosphere. Now, with such a fast object, you might notice that we need some stability. So we're going to go to aerodynamics and add on some of these basic fins. In this case, I still have radial symmetry set to 2. We're going to hit X twice and set that to 4. And we'll put that towards the bottom. So these 4 fins will help guide the craft through the air and hopefully keep it from flipping in flight. Let's call this Tester Mark III. And we'll make sure Jeb is aboard, as he is. Staging looks good. Let's go to the launch pad. Alright, launch pad time here. Let's click toggle SAS. What this will do is actually allow Jebediah to automatically assist in the stability of the craft. So it'll basically add a little bit of stability in the sense that he won't let it flip quite as easily as it might otherwise. I'm going to hit the toggle all the way up, which will only be affecting the liquid fuel rocket here. This solid fuel rocket is just going to burn like a firework as soon as we light it off. So let's hit spacebar and start going straight up. The goal here is just to keep steady and stable and keep going straight up, hopefully getting all the way out of the atmosphere. On the home planet of Kerbin that we are on right now, the atmosphere starts at 70,000 meters. So we've got quite a ways to go. Right now we are only hitting 3,000 meters. So let's see if we can get our speed up. If you start going too fast, you'll actually end up creating more drag. I'm going to drop that stage and light our second stage here. You can see some of these aerodynamic indicators of the drag. The higher you go, the less atmosphere there is to create drag. So as you play the game, you'll ideally just kind of learn by experience what is too much and what is too little. Right here I know I'm going a little too fast, so we're going to turn down our throttle a little bit. About half speed. I want my speed to be increasing, but not too fast. All right, now we're coming up on 70,000, and there it is. We are officially in space. You can tell the music has changed. We are hearing that ethereal, spacey music. If I press M, we'll see our map here. I can zoom in, and it looks like we're actually going quite far out. We have a lot of excess speed, so we're creating our hyperbolic arc. So we're going to be coming in at quite a steep, fast trajectory, but hopefully the heat shield will keep us nice and safe. Another thing I could do at this juncture is right-click our crew hatch and do a crew report in space near Kerbin. A little bit more science, that's always good. I'm going to keep that experiment. And now all we have to do is enjoy the view while we go up and back down again. You can see the rest of the debris falling a little bit behind us since we detached. In space, you also have the ability to warp time much faster because there's no aerodynamic physics going on, so we are basically on rails at this point. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. You also see our vertical speed. When that goes back down to 0 and underneath it, we are officially coming back down towards the planet. And there it goes. Now we are falling. I'm going to let this get a little bit lower. Now, as you get close to the atmosphere, again, 70,000 meters is where it starts on Kerbin. Go back to normal time. Because at this point, you want to make sure that your craft is oriented retrograde, which means that you're basically pointing your bottom towards the direction that you're falling in. And you can see that with this little X indicator. That is the retrograde marker. What that's going to mean is basically all the forces will be coming up from underneath and hitting that heat shield. So now we are slamming back into the atmosphere, and you'll start to see the fiery plasma surrounding our craft as we come back in at what is generally considered to be way too fast of a speed for a re-entry. Here we are. This one you can actually turn SAS off. The craft will automatically keep itself aligned because of the teardrop shape. You don't have to. You can leave SAS on. It'll be a little bit more stable, but the G-forces are peaking. About 10 Gs there is the peak, but Jebediah can handle it. He's a pro. Now that we've punched through the atmosphere, our surface speed will go down dramatically. We are hurtling back towards the Kerbal Space Center, since we did our straight up and down path there. About 5,000 meters, I'm going to go ahead and deploy the drogue chutes. Those will drop our surface speed a little bit more. And then I don't want to wait too much past 2,000 meters to deploy our main chute. There we go. So the drogue chutes have opened all the way. Now we can deploy our main chute with no worries. At this point, you should also make sure that you are not on the sea level height if you're not above the sea. So if we click land, you'll realize that we're actually a little bit closer to the land than we are the sea because there's an elevation. But since we're going so slow, I'm going to accelerate time again. Do the time warp here. And slowly descend right back to the Kerbal Space Center. If you're wondering why I launched to the east and we're landing to the west of the KSC, it's because the planet actually spun a little bit while we were in flight, meaning that we ended up coming down to the west of where we launched. Just a unique result of orbital physics there. Back to normal speed right before we hit the ground. Again, I just tend not to trust the physical time warp when you're making contact with any other surface. And there we are. Let's go ahead and recover the vessel. Our mission report, we got a little bit more science from recovering a suborbital flight. Now, suborbital is basically any flight that goes outside of the atmosphere but doesn't make a complete orbit. That's suborbital. We got a crew report. That's 13 more science. A little bit of money refunded. And Jebediah, no XP gain yet. He won't get more experience until we do an orbit. Let's look at our contracts and milestones here. We got some new altitude records, new speed records. Of course, reaching space itself is a big deal. Escape the atmosphere and the mission for doing so.